Hey tribe, today we are going to talk about 3 concepts that form the backbone of movement practice: isolation, integration, and improvisation. Together, these 3 things are going to help you not only improve your mobility, improve your stability, ensure that when you start to work on your strength and potentially work into loaded movement patterns, that you're much more resistant to injury. But also, these things are going to help you understand yourself and your mind a little bit better through your movement practice. Let's get into it. Before we get into today's video, I want to talk a little bit about my intention for this one, as well as some upcoming videos as well. I'm tired of giving you guys fish. I want to teach you how to fish. In other words, I don't want to just keep giving you guys different exercises and tutorials and skills to work on, but I want you to understand the underlying methods and principles behind movement practice. Isolation, integration, and improvisation really are some of the most fundamental concepts to understand why we focus on movement as a whole, as opposed to movements as individual tutorials and exercises. It's all about how we move and the connections between these different movements that creates movement practice. So, let's get into the first concept, isolation. In order to understand these concepts, it helps to think about the body like one chain. Sometimes we call this a kinetic chain in physiology. Think about different parts of your body, different muscle groups, different bones even, as different links in the chain, and your joints as the connections between those different links. All right. Now, for isolation, let's say for instance you want to work on your squat. When we squat, there's a closing angle at 3 key joints: the ankles, the knees, and the hips, right? In order to sink down deep in a squat and then also to be stable and strong in our squat, we need to be mobile as well as have optimal ranges of motion in each of these 3 key joints. Now we can work on our squat by simply doing squats, but if you want to make sure that you're really reducing your risk of injury and each of those individual links in the chain is strong, then you want to isolate each one. Just like the old phrase, we're only as strong as our weakest link. So let's address each link individually in isolation before we put together the whole movement. To address each of these individual links, we can start with something like, for instance, ankle cars. Cars is basically just another way to say rotation. So for an ankle car, I'm going to make sure that my legs stay straight. The whole body stays as still as possible, and I'm just rotating my ankle. I'm getting as much range of motion as I possibly can, and I'm exerting my strength and control through the maximum possible range. Of course, you want to go both directions. Now, we can also isolate one of the other links in the chain, or another joint, the knees. To perform a knee car, we would flex the toes back towards ourselves, interlace the fingers behind the thigh. The knee can actually rotate as well as flex and extend. So I'm gonna rotate outwardly, extend my leg close to straight, rotate inwardly, bring my foot down, press my heel into the floor, and repeat. Knee cars, again, are going to help me build my mobility and my stability, overall my control through that joint. Again, switching directions in isolation. And finally, we can work on hip cars. By the way, CARS, that acronym stands for Controlled Articulate Rotation. The rotation part is the really important one. hips can move in a lot of different directions. It's a fairly complex movement, but if we break it down a little bit or go nice and slow, we can get this fairly easily. So we're going to start by lifting the knee up. We're going to externally rotate, basically lifting the heel. The knee's going to swivel out to the side and making sure the whole body stays still. All the movement comes from that hip. My heel goes backwards, and then I squeeze my legs together, and I repeat. And then of course I can switch directions as well. Notice I'm doing my best to keep the whole body still as I continue with these joint rotations. Now, I'm not going to go through every detail of how to do ankle, knee, hip cars, and some other ones I'll mention in this video. That's how I'm going to give you guys fish. I'll give you tutorials. If you want a tutorial on how to do these exercises, head to the Evolution Collective. The link's in the description or the link's in my bio, okay? I want you to understand the overall concept. So this is how we isolate the different joints for a given movement pattern. Right now, we're talking about squats. Let's move on to integration. Not only can we combine individual links in a chain into one integrated, otherwise known as compound movement pattern, but we can take multiple compound movement patterns or different sections of our kinetic chain and combine them together into even more complex integrated movements. For instance, let's say you've been working on your ankles, your knees, and your hips for your squat, but you've also been working on your wrists, your elbows, and your shoulders for your pushing patterns. You can combine your squat with other compound patterns like push-ups, to bear squats, and even other integrated compound movements like lateral apes. Small links in the chain get put together into segments of the chain, and multiple segments get integrated into even larger segments, into full body movements that create complex movement patterns. That's integration. So once you've isolated the major joints of your body, the different links in the chain, and you've optimized your mobility and stability of each of those joints or each of those links, then it'll become very natural and easy to practice compound movement patterns like squats and push-ups, but also the other essential compound movement patterns of the human body, like pulling, lunging, and rotating, for starters. But of course, there are other ones. And once you've mastered all these essential patterns, practicing and performing choreographed flows that combine all these different patterns together will also be very natural. Which leads us to the final concept, improvisation. Improvisation is moving in an unstructured way without a goal in mind. Like real life, there is no plan. Improvisation is a great way to allow ourselves to explore our creativity, our intuition, and our self-expression. And this is when movement becomes a form of meditation. Not only do we develop ourselves physically, but mentally and even spiritually. Through improvised movement, we may discover frustrations or patterns that we get stuck in. We may also notice a sense of joy and playfulness. And this is the whole point, to merge our physical practice with our mental practice and meditate while we move. It's also important that we simply let go of any specific outcome we may be looking for and just trust that our body knows what to do after we've spent so much time practicing isolation and integrated movements. Isolation integration, and improvisation. They're quite grand concepts, but for good reason. Not only are these going to help you improve your mobility and stability to reduce the risk of injury in your movement practice, but also this is going to help you merge your movement with meditation, body with mind, to develop a more holistic physical and mental practice. Plus, I hope you're going to start to see how all of these things translate into your daily life, not just in the gym, not just on the mat, but everywhere you go. I trust you enjoyed today's video. As always, if you want to get deeper into these concepts, if you want to understand more details about some of the exercises we looked at today, please check out the Evolution Collective, try a program, join a community, read the blog, and I'll see you very soon. Thanks again, Tribe, and see you in the next video.